Welcome everybody to another episode of the Believers Club. We're pumped today because we asked you guys to give us feedback and let us know if there are certain topics that you want us to talk about. And so today is our first episode recording of one of our followers' feedback. So This is to Faith Loves Fizzies. Prab, this is an episode that you had mentioned to us, and it goes like this. What are some things you wish you had been taught as kids regarding self-care, confidence, or pursuing creative outlets? This is an epic question.
This was a great question. I feel like this is something that we always ask ourselves, what have we learned or what were we taught as kids to get to where we are today? Mm-hmm. And we've talked about so many different things, and I feel like I don't think we've ever even dove into it in like what we are taught as kids, because it really stays with you for the rest of your life.
It shapes us, right?
It really does shape you as to what you're going to do, what kind of person you're going to be. And so we definitely appreciate that, because that was amazing. So we'll start off
with our parents.
Yeah, let's talk about our parents.
Love them. Amazing people.
Amazing people. I feel like they do the best. They teach you what they know. And sometimes as humans, we forget that. We forget they're also human, and they're only doing and telling you what they know, and what they don't know, they're not going to understand, and they're not going to be able to teach you. And sometimes that turns into resentment as we get older, because we think they owe us the teachings, but we don't realize that they might not even know that they're supposed to tell us certain things, or this is how something is supposed to be.
I would be so like, let's say me and Trina were to get knocked up now, right? And we were to have kids, and we never learned, like, I don't know, let's say a whole different language, let's say abracadabra language. And our kid grows up, we not knowing that we're supposed to teach them this, they grow up being really pissed off, like, how come you never fucking taught me? I think sometimes our parents there's things that they didn't know. And now we're like, why didn't you tell us this? Because first of all, not only are we a generation apart, or a couple generations, not only that, but we're also from different parts of the world.
Yeah. And right? It's different times. Look where we are now, 2020.
Dude, like, things have changed in 1 year. Imagine, like, it's crazy.
It's decades of changes. And again, it really starts with, that's the one thing I've taken away. What I've learned from my parents is that they are also human. That's the biggest thing I've taken away as I'm getting older and getting closer to their age, and trying to experience what they might have been going through at this age, and what they knew and what they were able to pass down. Because yes, I resented my parents for a long time because of a lot of things, and I felt I wasn't able to open up to them or tell them, but it all starts with, I feel like, talking about it and asking for what you want and actually putting it out there. That's how they're going to know what you want and what you don't want in life. And we'll start off.
Having conversations it's such a big deal.
No, it's.
And we're so scared to do it.
It truly starts with talking about anything. And I feel like it is scary, because we as humans are trained to watch for what the other person may feel like if you say something. And that may come from a clean heart, or you may be like a negative person. But again, it's like, then we just stop communicating because we end up watching for too many things. Yeah. And then we just keep everything shut out and we don't bring it up. But without bringing it up, it's something that just is not gonna get resolved. It's not gonna get resolved. You're not gonna dive into it. You're not gonna kind of explore that. And so we wanted to the creative that's the first thing when we came across the question that came up, we're like, hey, like, how did this relate to you? What can we talk about it? And that's the one thing that came up for the creative outlet. And
some of the things that you wish had been taught as kids, right?
And one for for self-care, confidence, and pursuing creative outlets. And that's the first thing we start. We're like, how were you? Because first I went into, again, the resentment. I went into the negative, like what they didn't teach me when we just came across the topic. And then we're like, okay, but what did you actually take away? And for me, my example was that for where I am today in my arts journey and everything and how I've gotten here, I asked for art lessons as a kid. We lived in the city in India, and I was probably 8 or 9. We had just moved there. and it was like a new place, city. I came from a village, so I came from a very like a community, small knit, to now in a city where it was like we were renting a place in an apartment. It felt really foreign. It felt like Canada to me down there. But I remember there was an art teacher across the street, literally across the street in the building, and I kept asking for art lessons because I think there used to be an art class, and I wasn't that good. I wanted to be good, but I wasn't that good in my school. So I asked for after school. Like I kept asking my mom if there's an art teacher, and I kept asking for it. And finally, my mom's like, "Okay, we'll get you lessons." And I got probably like 3 art lessons. And I remember I was so mesmerized. I was telling Harj, first painting I ever saw, it was like a Santa Claus, and it was just such a detailed Santa Claus. I remember it even to this day so vividly. And that I took those 3 lessons, and I remember after that I just kept pursuing it, and stayed in school, took art classes and everything in regular school. And then I did art competitions like with 1,000 kids, and I won 2nd place at one of the competitions. And that forever changed me. Like from that point on, I was like, oh, I'm capable
now
of
this chick's got a studio, she's doing all makeup, she's killing it.
The makeup love started from that.
What was her art teacher's name?
I can't remember.
Well, shout out to him.
It was an Indian man, and he was just a very good teacher and just a teacher. He wasn't about anything else. There was no unsafeness that I felt around him. It was mainly about art and what I was able to bring to the table and what he had to teach me. And
that's awesome.
Yeah. So that's how I got, luckily my parents said yes to me. But back to why that happened is because I was consistently always asking for it. And I made a point to always bring it up. And that may be annoying as a kid from a parent to always hear about it. Some parents might just disregard it or not give into it. But luckily, my mom and my dad you know what, let's get her lessons. And, it was like 2-3 lessons, but that changed my world.
Yeah.
And now I'm a makeup artist, and I know the love started from the creativeness. That's where it started from. That's how I got it. I asked for that.
And I think it's like, I don't know, it's cool to take a lesson out of that, which is probably if there's something that you want, like what do kids do? Kids are relentless in asking for things, and they'll even if you have to bug your parents into getting it,
which it's annoying because they have a kid.
But it's
just
like a lesson
you.
we take from as kids is if you really want something, just don't take no for an answer. Like ask for what you want.
Yeah, truly, and that applies to you as an adult. Like I clearly am where I am because I learned some type of persist in pursuing
communicate
something continuously and communicate it. And it's a lot of work for sure. Like you'll go through non-communicative times, but that's one thing I take away, that as an adult, that's the one thing I can apply, that you got to ask for what you want and be prepared to get knocked down 10 times and still have to get up the 11th. And that's really truly what it's about.
Creatively, I think that so I go back to the question, what are some things that you wish that you had been taught as kids? And especially let's go with creative. I don't think I was necessarily put in front of anything to really start my creativity. But I will say this, as a child who is the last born, the 3rd kid, there's an age gap between me and my brother. And I remember spending a lot of time alone. So as a kid playing by yourself, you kind of have to get creative in how to occupy yourself and how to stay entertained. I think that is something that I did learn growing up. But sometimes I wish that I had been put into maybe more extracurricular, maybe more hobbies or things like that, where I could flex that creative muscle. But I never truly felt like I was a creative kid growing up. I remember I used to love dancing, and I used to love being that kid at parties that danced on the stage when nobody was there.
Same here.
That straight up. And I loved that the camera was recording me. Like I went extra hard for that. And I remember looking around and just seeing like the whole banquet hall, like clapping. I was that kid. And my mom took that and was like, okay, do you want to go into dance lessons? She put me into dance as a teenager. And I remember going into dance for maybe a span of like 7 years. And I loved it because it allowed me to build some sort of a creative expression, but it wasn't necessarily the style that I wanted to be in. So I think one thing I may have wished is if I had been maybe asked more questions about what
What
do
interests
you
you?
want to
Yeah.
do, right?
Yeah.
Super grateful for it because I have memories that now last me a lifetime. But I still go back and think, okay, you know what? Maybe as an adult now, I can pursue the type of dance that I wanted, even though it is pretty late to be a dancer. But I still want to pursue that. So I think as parents, it's super important to ask more questions of what sparks your kids' creative joy. But that was sort of my takeaway from the creative side.
And again, they're only going to ask you what they know personally.
Yeah,
too.
I was never vocal about like, Mom, I want this. Dad, I want this. I was always a pretty like quiet kid, and whatever they gave me, I was like, all right, let's do it.
Yeah, and you know what? I was very similar too, because it's just me and my brother, so I'm the only girl, and we have like a 7-year difference too. And I had a lot of friends in the village, but I loved playing with just by myself, creating stories and like climbing walls and having like literally playing out movie scenes by myself and things like that. So I was always that kid too. So I think that, and then and then I had probably got to a point where I was just comfortable asking, and after consistently
I guess
asking,
we both spent a lot of time alone as kids.
Of course, yeah, for sure.
Right?
Yeah, I was very much alone all the time because me and my brother were just apart. So if it was cousins or friends, that was the only time. Besides that, it was like I was living my own life and fantasy or whatever you want to call it.
And that's probably why we're very individualistic people to this day.
Yeah, for sure.
But that was an awesome question, creativity. And when I guess we talk about what we wish we had been taught as kids regarding confidence.
Yes.
That's the
one that I feel like we're being Indian, South Asian. We're definitely not taught to be confident, especially as females.
As females, no.
We're not taught to, live out our individuality and be who we are fully. And that all, it comes down to what confidence is really about. It's us feeling confident in ourselves, but I feel like sometimes that depends on how other people feel about us. If another person doesn't think we look a certain way or think we are this or that, we might actually start questioning ourselves based on what the other person thinks. And it's a lot about people's opinion, what the outside has to say, more than what your parents think about you and what they can teach you. They almost leave it up to the society to teach you, which the society, all they can teach you is when to lose and gain weight, and who's pretty and how dark and light you are, and all these things that we deal with on the daily. But
and that's like the culture, the whole culture to some degree, and our parents become consumed in the culture because that's just how the rest of the community and their world, their society is.
It's easier to go with the crowd. It's always easier to go with the crowd because you can blend in and you don't have to take that punch from people.
And it's, speaking of that, like they also live in a generation where maybe if they did try to stand up from the crowd, they get a beating for it.
They do, exactly.
So like sometimes
they get disowned. All this, it's a lot of hardships.
And it becomes safer to be like, fuck this lesson, they'll learn it when they're
exactly.
And as long as the kid has got food in their system, a place to sleep, like these are external things. I think for confidence, the one thing that my mom did really, really well was raising me to believe that there was no boy-girl difference. And I really appreciated that because it could have been really easy to go in that direction, but and I think it has to do with the fact that maybe she was like raised here in Canada. So she was like, no, equality, fuck this, da-da-da. But I remember my parents made a rule. And this rule was my brothers, because they're so much older than me, they started dating, right? And my parents were like, okay, so they're dating. That means they're getting married soon. And they go, well, if you're going to have a girlfriend, and you're bringing them home, which you are allowed to meet us and whatnot, we have to be very careful. Make sure you only bring someone home if you're serious about them,
Hmm.
because if we allow you guys to bring home girlfriends, then that means we're going to have to allow Harji to also bring home boyfriends.
Which is amazing.
And I remember them saying that, my mom specifically being like, if my 17 or 18-year-old son has a girlfriend, then I have to understand that my daughter may do that also at 17 and 18. So they said, okay, because my mom goes, I would rather them be dating at 17, 18, and I know who they're dating, um, instead of my daughter having to keep it a secret, which I did end up doing anyway, because I just felt like I didn't want to introduce him to someone that wasn't going in that marriage direction. But it made me feel confident in the sense that, as I didn't walk around the world thinking because I'm a woman I'm different or I'm
Yeah.
less than. And that started from being at home.
And my complete opposite, my experience was I was consistently compared, and the point was always made why, oh, he's a guy so he can do all those things, oh, you're a girl, you can't do this. And my consistency was, why? No, I'm gonna do what the guy is doing. This is just in my home, like
Yeah.
with me and my brother. It just never felt fair. So I definitely, to this day, now I'm getting older, so I'm getting better at controlling my thoughts and actually working on myself mentally.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like for a long time, to this day again, the confidence lacks in a lot.
Yeah.
Like sometimes I judge my own work when it's beautiful. I judge it to the point where I critique it too much. And that all comes down to really how I grew up and how I felt about myself, because that's how I'll feel about the things I do, including my business.
Yeah.
And if you lack confidence and have self-esteem issues, which all kind of stem from that type of comparison or not comparison,
Yeah.
You could go either direction. So my confidence definitely, my mom, I wish she was given a little bit of equality in her home to pass that on to me. So my biggest thing would be like, I just wish my parents were given a little bit more of control over their life, which is impossible.
So that they could pass it down.
Which is impossible because of their times. But yes, just to pass it down, because then self-care, confidence, creative, everything that we feel like our parents should be passing down to us, it would have been passed down.
Yeah, I wish that, like, this question, the creative, confidence, self-care, I wish that our parents
knew
could have
those
had
things.
that. Yeah.
And they knew those three words, self-care, confidence.
It's new to our generation.
Yeah. And like, I wish they knew that they did have the will and the capability of pursuing it, but because, again, back to what the culture,
that's
and just shutting your dreams off, that it was easier that way than to pursue things that challenged everything around them. And again, I'm at a point now, it's like it's on me as an adult to work on those things than to keep resenting the people that brought me into this world and just did their best.
It's crazy, man. Like, I wish that this, like, being able to even answer this question is a novelty, it's a privilege in comparison to them, right? Because they were like, well, we were in survival mode. We didn't have time for creativity. We didn't get to, like, think about confidence or self-care. Like, our parents' generation was literally in survival mode to just be married and make a marriage work with a stranger and to have children with him that same year, probably. Imagine being a woman who's like, your partner is picked and you get knocked up that same year to a stranger, and then your life isn't, like,
it's not your life. It's already set up for you and you just follow
and
that.
So creativity and confidence and those things, I wish that they had access to that too.
Yeah, to pass it down. And that's just that. And I feel like now it's on our generation to teach it back and also move it forward, because it's gonna go forward.
And like, the person at the front pays for the person's coffee in the back. It's like, okay, if we're in a drive-through of life, let's say, and we put in an order, we're like, this is what we want, this is what we want to learn, this is what we want to experience, and then we receive it. It's our job, like, as soon as I pick up that sandwich, it's my job to also then get the next person theirs as well. Right. And so it's like teaching it back to our parents once we get to learn the stuff that they never got to.
And knowing that again,
That analogy
you
probably made
opening
no
up
sense.
and like even you opening up, that brings up a lot of things that aren't being regularly talked about. So know that
Yeah.
you will also get that pushback that
Yeah.
we are talking about, that the culture at one time kept people shut because they didn't want to go against the grain. And us going against the grain, it comes with the hardships, but I feel like we're at a point, we're lucky to be where we are. And look at us sitting here just recording and talking to people and being able to share our truth. They weren't able to do all that. So I'm just glad that we're able to have these types of conversations and have them with the people that actually need it, and that includes our parents.
Okay, so like we're gonna have kids one day, and our kids are gonna ask us things, and we're gonna be like, listen, like I don't know,
Mm-hmm.
and they're gonna be taught certain things from society, and they're gonna question, why didn't my parents teach us this? Like this is gonna happen to us because it happens with every generation. And our kids are gonna be on a camera screen talking about, my mom didn't teach me certain things, but she did teach me certain things. Mm-hmm. So this is gonna be like a repeat. And it's just going to get better and better and better with each generation, but there will always be.
Yeah. And I feel like that's as long as you go into that mindset, whenever you do go into a thought that you question your parents or anything, your childhood, you question it. I feel like just go down to the basis of it. Like at the end of the day, we're all human. They are human. And I'm able to say that now. 5 years ago, I would have been like, fuck, they fucked up. All these things.
You've
again,
grown.
It's a process. So know that with age, you're gonna realize like life is so much more complicated than you think. It's not as simple as having kids and they should be taught everything. It's not. It's truly what the fuck we are gonna pass on to the next generation, and then what they're gonna be able to pass on. Yeah. And that's truly what it's
just
about.
what it is. And I'll share this with you. I was telling Serena that I was listening to this podcast with Jay Shetty on purpose, and he was interviewing Miguel. And the topic was mental health, like our topic last week.
Make sure you check that out.
Every Wednesday.
Yeah.
And Miguel asked Jay, he goes, so tell me about your community and how you deal with mental health. And Jay was just like, we don't deal with mental health. That's the thing. Like, we don't grow up talking about it because our parents didn't grow up talking about it. And he said, it's so easy though for us to reach a certain age, and then we become resentful and say, oh my God, I'm so mad at my parents for not teaching this. But he brought up such a good point. He said, it's actually our job to probably go back to our parents and ask them like, hey, like, are you okay? Because no one's probably ever asked them that before. And so he goes, you as the kid, like maybe go back and ask them like, how are you mentally?
Yeah.
Because we can't be resentful over people for not helping us that were never helped.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. They needed it more themselves than
they dealt with more than we probably ever have, right? They at our age, they were, or even younger than us, they were more worried about putting a roof over their heads and not getting beat up by racist people out in the streets, right? Like they had other things they had to focus on. And so when he said that, I was like, damn, like we're asking and carrying resentment for not being helped by people who were never helped. Yeah, it doesn't make sense. But anyways, so we were talking about confidence. I think we've become very confident people.
I think again, it's things that you're gonna, as much as your parents are there to teach you a lot of things, you are also as a human like responsible to learn a lot of shit in your life, and hopefully actually grow from it and learn from it and grow as a person, and not keep things that are bothering you inside. So as much as we look back to have things passed down to us, it's equally as important for us to be responsible for our life and what we choose to do. And that may be a choice to be resentful towards our parents, or choosing that, hey, you know what, they're also humans, let me see what they did pass down and what did I make of that. And I feel like it's a process. Again, it's just with age. When you're younger, you're gonna resent them, and depending on what they do for you and what they don't do for you, that's just the process. And as you grow up, hopefully you get to a place where you just find peace. You find peace,
totally,
and you look at yourself and know that, again, the responsibility is on you now. As much as they did what they did, what are you doing now?
Mhm.
And that's the biggest thing and the choice for you to make.
And you may not resent your parents like as a whole, but you might resent certain things.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Feel like, oh, I wish this was a little bit better. That
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
so. And I think that there isn't really much point in like going into detail about what those things are because they're irrelevant now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But if we talk about self-care, so that was the other part of the question is, what do you wish that your parents taught you about self-care? And I'll add on like, what is it that we actually did learn?
Yeah. Yeah. Mine was, self-care wasn't something that was important. I've lived everywhere. So I wasn't always in Canada and
Mm-hmm.
I lived in India. So that changed the way females are taught. My self-care was more like hush hush. It's just keep it female to female, just me and my mom. So it's very much, I grew up that way. And over time, I actually started educating my mom or just telling her about certain things and opening her mind to the things, like we said, just there's nothing that I can think of on the spot, or even that I just thought about. Self-care just wasn't something that was put on a pedestal to be taught to a female where I grew up to a certain age.
Yeah, I feel that. I think self-care, whether it be emotionally or physically,
like
I think
like sex and all these things weren't taught to me at all. Like everything, period, was hush hush. All the female things were hush hush,
which is crazy because those are our basic things, and if we're taught to be ashamed of them, then we at a very biological level are going to feel ashamed of our basic existence. But
yes,
I remember the thing is, I think I have that advantage where my mom grew up here in Canada, where she kind of took those blows for me. And it's kind of painful to think about because I'm like, I can only imagine at that time living here, what that must have been like. She probably grew up really confused because she's in a Western culture. And as soon as she stepped back into the house, it was super dissy, right? Because it's just how it was. And so I remember her telling me like her horror stories of like getting her period and what that was like. Like it was traumatizing. It was like legit traumatizing because nobody had warned her that this was ever going to even happen to her body. And then one day she's at a family function at the Godora, and this is what happened. And I remember her saying she thought she was dying.
I remember, like, I wasn't taught about
it's a
periods.
Scary thing.
I just woke up to it, and I remember telling my mom's like, she cried or something, and she just kind of like shut it and didn't stop till it came again. Then it was just between me and my mom. She didn't really like teach me at that point.
It was like
because it was a thing that was always supposed to be hush hush. That's what she knew. It was always kept like under wraps, and we can find out.
And that's why I feel like sometimes they're scared to have daughters because they're just gonna have to go through that again, which is sad. I remember when I turned, I think 12, my mom stocked the cupboards with pads and all that stuff. And this might be TMI, but whatever, y'all asked for this. She stocked the thing up with pads, and then she told me, and as a kid I was like, the fuck are you talking about? Like, what is this? And she was like, no, it's gonna happen anytime now, and I need you to know this is where the supplies are, this is what it means, and like I'll be here. And I remember that day like it was Christmas, because I was like, I'm prepared for this. And nobody was home, and it happened, and I knew exactly where to go, what to do. And I called her and I was like, yo, it happened. And she was like, okay, awesome. And it was one of those things where it was more of like a bonding moment. And she then opened up and said, this is why though, like this is why. And in regards to like to sex, it was weird because I grew up in a family where like my dad was super, super traditional and very strict, and then a mom who's very Western and open. So I was kind of like, grew up in both sides of the world, because even though my parents might have been liberal, we still had a lot of relatives, right? And like, you
and again, we got to worry about society too. You can't
run away from that strictness. And I think in Desi families, we do take the opportunity to parent other people's children. so it's not like I've never had the wrath of any sort of like downsides, but like I remember like sometimes my parents being critiqued as to how liberal they were and having to see that. And I just, it was hard also to sometimes connect with people my age in my family, because I'm like, we grew up
Completely
so different,
yeah.
right? And so anyways, with self-care, the one thing that I wish was done a little bit better was the ability to openly communicate, like to
That's it.
openly talk about,
Yeah.
because that's a
Yeah.
huge part of self-care. Like
Yeah.
there's the hygienic stuff, there's sex and like all those things, but then there's the emotional self-care.
Yes.
And I didn't grow up as a kid really feeling like I had a voice at all, and not because it was like I'm a girl thing. It was because of there was no time to listen.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I remember that. And me and my mom have talked about this. Like we've opened up about these situations and I've learned from her perspective. And she also actually listened to mine and made changes as to how she showed up for me as my mom, because she didn't realize that I was feeling like that all these years. And because I didn't feel like I could talk to anybody about my inner issues, I ended up in an abusive relationship. And I remember having to tell her, she said, you've been with this person for 4 years and you never once told us that he was doing this to you and doing that to you. And I said, Mom, because I'm not used to talking to you guys. And that's when it clicked for her and she was like, fuck. And now she talks to me all the damn time.
Which is so good. Like, I hope every parent gets to that point where they truly want to just stick by their child, especially when the child like comes to them, which doesn't happen.
I mean, I was 25, 26 when I had to tell her.
You're like, a baby to them no matter how fucking old you are. And like same year, like I didn't tell them for years. And I wish I came to my parents and talked about my abuse sooner and like told my dad that your brother is an abuser sooner. But it is what it is now. But now I know that, you know, like, again, you gotta ask for shit. You gotta communicate whatever it is that you want or want to learn from them, or you want to tell them that you should have learned from them. It truly all comes down to the one word, and that's communication. And that's truly
across the creativity, across the self-care, across the confidence.
Truly is, whatever you weren't taught, now you can let them know that, hey, this is what I didn't learn. This is how you could have done it, if you want to get to that point where you want to have that resentment resolved. Or you actually teach them like, hey, you know, this is however you want to do it. I think
and ask them like, this is what I feel like I missed.
Yeah.
What was going on with you at that time?
Yeah. Ask them.
And
what were they dealing with?
You'll feel, I guarantee you will feel some, what's that word? Closure. On that issue, because you'll be like, oh, you weren't not teaching me these things because you didn't like me or you fucking were trying to be an ass. There was actually a reason. And okay, now that I understand that, then I can teach myself that.
I'll give you a quick, before we wrap it up, a little story. So we moved to India, and I used to always question why my parents why they chose to move to India when we had a house and everything, life here. And now as an adult, I look back and I realize that life isn't it's not easy. I've been living on my own. I know what adulting is and what you gotta fucking go through. And I'm like, pay for all the, and I'm like, they hated what they were going through. And my dad was dealing with a lot of mental health issues like that he would have never opened up about. And this is something I'm saying for the first time. And it's like, I didn't know that until I found out. I was like, oh shit. There's always more to the story than what you know. And because we don't ask, we'll never find out. So I feel like if there's any unresolved issues or shit with the parents, start talking about it one thing at a time. If it's not all at once, get it off your chest, figure out why things weren't passed down. Chances are they weren't even
you'll see a completely different movie reel by talking to them, and you'll start to really like connect with them. I think this is for most parents in general, not even just South Asian parents. I think like parents in general, I think there's things that we might grow up wishing that were done differently, and we'll never understand it until we ask them about it. And I think
for sure. Like, and if you want to figure it out, have that conversation. And if the parents understand, amazing. And if the parent is on the toxic side where they're just not it's okay. You express what you got and you keep it pushing. You keep it pushing. You take just that responsibility back. It comes to you now.
Yeah.
Fuck what they taught you. Leave all that behind. Let go of anything that's holding over you. If the person isn't trying to understand where you're coming from as a kid, as a child, you push it. You
and I think this is
that.
why this is a prime example, I think, of why people have kids and they try to do it differently. That's why each generation gets better, is because they want to give their kids maybe what they didn't have and pass on the things that they did have. And it just keeps going and going and going. And you know what? If you weren't put in the art class or the dance classes, go put yourself in the art class and dance class, man. Go do it. If you weren't taught confidence, there's tons of ways to practice it. There's resources. If you weren't taught self-care, start like opening up about that. And I promise you, those are things that you will start to resolve. And then we urge you, teach it back. Teach it back before our parents and that generation starts to get too old and die off. Allow them to have a little bit of what you've learned. Something that I'm learning with my mom's cancer is like, I now have so many tools spiritually and personally that I've learned. I want to share those with her. Like, I want her to have that piece as well. Right? For sure. So this is an awesome topic. I know we kind of went in a lot of different directions, but this is the beauty of getting a topic idea from another person, someone that listens, an audience member, a friend, because it gives us something to think about that we may not have even thought to talk about before.
No, it was great. So thank you so much. We're gonna do this. Hopefully we're gonna continue to always reach out and get more questions from you guys, ideas and topic ideas. We do have a couple more that we're gonna record in the coming weeks. But yeah, every Wednesday, check us out. Make sure you check our last week's episode, which is on mental health. And hopefully you guys enjoyed and hopefully found this helpful. This was truly dedicated to you.
Go follow her, man. Everybody,
Faith Loves Fizzies. We'll tag her and we'll put the information in the captions. But yeah, every Wednesday, check us out at noon. And until next time.
Oh, I guess we should go follow her because she does. I know she does makeup and beauty products and lots of confidence. That girl is very confident.
So body positivity. You want to head there if you're and make sure you guys subscribe to us. Make sure you follow us on all platforms. Do all the things we almost didn't say.
Until next week.
Bye.